This happened when I was 15 years old. My best friend Anthony wanted me to come over at night because his parents wouldn't be out all weekend. I parked my bike in his yard, then sneaked in through his back door and played every video game he had, from FIFA to Call of Duty, with popcorn and other junk food. As the night wore on, we would switch from video games to watching half the movie and making prank calls, getting bored. Around 10 p.m. Anthony made a few phone calls to various pizza places. When it was my turn, I just dialed a few random numbers, hoping someone would come to their house. On my fourth attempt, I finally got through to someone. A man spoke in a deep, rough voice, saying yes instead of hello. Anthony's laughter in the background had me stumbling mid-sentence. I had never made a prank call before, so I sucked it up. The guy on the other end was quiet. I got my face back straight and tried to get on the phone, something like, sir, would it be okay if I borrowed a wheel of your car? What's your name? My name is Bob. Are you sure it's not Anthony? It hit me like a brick. I looked at Anthony. His face was clearly filled with fear. I hung up, not wanting to talk to anyone else. Anthony. Actually, I asked him. I don't know. He told me, does your caller ID information show your name or something that my dad doesn't? We jumped on the computer and did some research to try to figure out how to find someone's name by their phone number. It didn't make sense how he could find Anthony's name so quickly. He was so young. While on one of the personal information sharing websites, we asked a question on Yahoo Answers because no one had a similar experience. The question didn't yield any answers. I suggested she call her dad, but she said she wasn't supposed to be with anyone that weekend. So she didn't want to call. We had planned to sleep in the living room, so we started watching the movie again that we hadn't finished beforehand. Right after the phone call came back to my mind, Anthony and I looked at each other when we heard the sound of his front storm door opening, and then the front door knob started to rattle. Music. It managed to turn about halfway before the lock closed. Anthony turned off the TV and I went to the window to see who it was. I opened the blinds. There was a tall. The man standing outside noticed the blinds moving and started looking at me. I almost threw the blinds back into place. Anthony and I hid in the kitchen listening for any further noises until we heard the sound of the backyard gate. The door was opening just outside the kitchen window. Damn it, I said, I forgot to lock the back door. Anthony begged me to run and close it. I reached the corridor leading to his back door and froze. There was a silhouette standing outside the back door. I don't think he noticed me, but he was definitely looking inside the house. He opened the door and stepped inside. I tiptoed towards the kitchen and motioned for Anthony to follow me upstairs. We entered his room as quietly as possible. I closed the door so that there was no noise. We crawled under his bed. There was a cloth under his bed so that you couldn't see anything under it without removing the cloth. The lower doors opened. Each door opened. As we got closer to the stairs, he finally started climbing up and down, and he was now just outside the door. The door to the room opened. I heard Anthony's breathing, very loud footsteps. The footsteps moved towards the closet and then the closet opened. I heard the coat hangers moving back and forth, jackets and coats rubbing against each other. The footsteps moved towards the bed and stopped. I felt like my heart was going to burst out of my chest. Anthony's breathing was so loud I had to cover my face. There was nothing but silence in the room. We had been lying in silence for so long. I felt like he wasn't even in the room. And I removed my hand from Anthony's mouth and whispered in his ear, "Do you think we can run?" He was going to answer. Just then, the most disturbing scream I've ever heard came to my ears. Anthony was being pulled out from under the bed. Music. I crawled out and saw him struggling with the man. I had been desperately searching for something as a weapon. I settled for the screwdriver sitting on his nightstand. I quickly walked over to the man and plunged the screwdriver into his room. Back. He let go of Anthony, screaming in agony, giving us time to get out of the room. Running towards the road would give away our position too easily. It would take a long time to reach his neighbor's house. We dove into the woods along the tree line and hid behind a bush, watching the house. The back door opened. The man looked around the yard as he came out. Then he looked into the woods. I thought his eyes went to me. He started to peer through the tree line. It seemed too dark for him to see us. Then he turned his head towards us. I went behind the bushes. "Joe, he's coming, what a dude, we got to run." He was right, the guy was coming fast towards us. How did he see us? We ran through the woods, the leaves crunching under us. Anthony tripped over something. I sat with him, hoping we had run far enough. Not even 20 seconds later, footsteps coming from the direction we were running came quickly. They only slowed down 2 trees. As we lay face down on the leaves, after a while the footsteps moved to the other direction. We waited until we couldn't hear them anymore and turned back towards the house. The sound of the leaves breaking and my heavy breathing was overpowering. I could swear I heard the leaves breaking behind us. We went back to his yard, and this time we remembered to close the back door so we could call the police now. Anthony was in line with them while I patrolled the back windows, making sure no one was out. It was so dark I couldn't see anything though, so I did something that seemed stupid today. I turned on his yard light, and as I walked a little further into the woods I saw him standing in front of a big tree. He went back into the woods and disappeared out of sight. That was the last time Anthony or I saw him. If I told you we occasionally heard our windows banging or something, I'd be lying. That was 5 years ago and nothing happened. I wonder if it was actually connected to the prank call somehow, right? Yeah, that was the story of me and my best friend Anthony almost dying during the break. Music. My wife and I had a fight, but one night she wouldn't stop talking about stupid to the point where I forgot to put the toilet seat down, and she lectured me in such an ear-piercing voice that I couldn't stand it anymore. My friend Paul called and said I could spend the night there because I was tired and I didn't need to talk to my crazy wife anymore. Paul had a huge house at the time. My wife always yelled at me that all my friends had better houses than us. We had a few beers and she advised me to stay there as long as I needed. But I assured her that I would only be staying one night. I didn't want to be bothered. I slept in one of his guest bedrooms. Surprisingly, he had 3 guests. The bedroom, but so far only had to use one. He doesn't use the other 2 bedrooms and only plans to use them for parties or something like that. The 3 guest bedrooms in the house are lined up next to each other, while Paul's bedroom is across the hall. It's definitely a strange arrangement. But it did cause me to hear strange noises from the next room. I assumed Paul was doing something inside, but it quickly became annoying, so I decided to walk over and see what was going on. The door knocked, but it was locked. I opened the door to Paul's room and asked him what the sound was. He was already in bed. He couldn't hear anything. When I asked him why he kept the door closed, he said that he always kept both doors closed because he kept some personal belongings inside. I warned him that there was a strange sound coming from the room, and he told me to go back to sleep, and if I kept hearing it, come back to him. So I went back to bed and the sounds were completely gone. Half an hour passed. I finally started to sleep. Just then I heard a slight tap on the wall. The next room came over him. Then a soft noise. I got out of bed and ran back to Paul's room. This time he took me seriously. He took the keys to both doors and opened the door next to me. We went inside and felt the sound of the wind. On the way, the window was completely open and the cupboard we dug through the whole room. There were marks on the bed as if someone was there. The closet was full of empty bags and his valuables. His drawers were gone while he was in his room. Paul suddenly ran into the hallway. I was confused at first, but I quickly figured it out as he was checking the other room. I was right next to him when he opened the door to the 3rd guest bedroom, and the first thing we saw was a black figure jumping out the window onto the balcony roof. Paul was about to jump out after him, but instead we both ran out the back door and he was already gone in the hopes of catching him. Good thing we didn't catch him, because what we found in this room was much more disturbing. The white sheets on the bed were stained with blood. The butter knife he had lost in the cupboard was sitting on the floor with a few blood stains on it, and of course all his valuables were gone. These people were probably homeless and probably dangerous drug addicts and had been living in his house for over a week. He even mentioned something about how fast his food went, and yet he was so skinny. It makes a lot more sense now that we were drinking. As far as we know, none of them were caught. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was my first sleepover. A big part of my childhood was my good friend. His name was Jordan. We were 10 years old at the time. He had a huge basement where we would play video games until 1 a.m. and then sleep on the couch. Like two little rebels, we would try to sleep on the couch instead of brushing our teeth. I would fall asleep on the couch where I slept. Suddenly I woke up. At some unknown time I woke up. I realized that the TV was still on. There was a blank screen, a very soft light coming in. But it was enough to notice something in the far corner of the basement next to the stairs. It was a tall thing. I didn't know what it was and I can't really describe it. What it looked like. I know it reached almost to the ceiling. The sound of the TV turning off and the disappearance of the small light made me scream. I closed my eyes and lay still. I don't even remember that I fell. I fell back asleep. I just remember suddenly waking up and hearing a terrible scream from above. Jordan's mother. She woke up too and we looked at each other. Then I ran up the stairs to his parents' room. His mother was crying. His father was turning the room upside down. He walked past us out. There was no one in the room, no one in the room, no sign of entry or exit. I'm still friends with Jordan to this day and that was the last time I brought this up. He said his mother didn't like it. Speaking of which, but he once admitted that he saw a tall black figure standing by their bedroom door. I'm pretty sure that's what I saw in the basement that night.